I've had all these other events through at this point, it was almost 20 years. And I spent time in the Marine Corps, my upbringing. Why this one? He said, this is the one that filled your glass. This is the one that put you over the edge. They all added up to this one. I didn't have to suffer for 6 years. My quality of life was terrible for 6 years. I enjoyed nothing. The anxiety, the depression, the destructive behaviors that I was doing, I didn't have to do if I would have just asked for help year one.
Welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. This is episode number 68. Thanks so much for joining me. My name is Conrad Weaver. I'm your host for the show, and I'm the director of the PTSD 911 documentary, and my goal is to bring you content that will help improve your life, especially if you're a first responder. Mike Bergin is a recently retired detective with the Garland Police Department down in Garland, Texas. I first met Mike while he was holding training with the Bomb Squad in Garland while I was working on my film. Mike's story plays a small role in the film, but an important role. And after we convinced him to sit in front of my camera, he reluctantly told his story. Well, Mike retired literally just this week. As we are working on this podcast, he retired after a 30-year career in law enforcement, and he credits the leadership at Garland PD for helping him get his life back on track after a police-involved shooting about 20 years into his career. I wanted to bring him to the podcast to share an update on where he's been since the film came out. And so this past fall, around Thanksgiving, we recorded this conversation. The video connection with Mike wasn't as good as it could be, so if you're watching on YouTube, you won't see Mike. You'll just see his photos, so I hope you forgive me for that. But here's my conversation with Detective Mike Bergin. Well, Mike Bergin, welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. So glad we can have you on the program today.
Good to see you again, Conrad.
It is great to see you too. It was, how many years ago that we recorded that first interview with you for the film?
You tell me.
That was back in 2021, I think, maybe 2021, something like that. For the listeners who don't know what we're talking about, so Mike Bergin is a detective with the Garland Police Department in Garland, Texas, and he made a brief appearance in my film PTSD 911 and telling a piece of his story, a really important part of the film, an important story. And Mike, at first, you weren't really excited about being on camera, right?
No, not at all. I had to really think hard about it.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about your background. What got you into police work?
Well, what got me into police work was an uncle when I was growing up, and grew up poor. But when we go to his house, they never struggled. So it was his job security for him.
Yeah.
And, when you turn 18, mom kicks you out. So I did 8 years in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was good. All I wanted to do was be in the military or be a cop. So I got to do both.
Okay.
So when I got out of the Marines, I came to Texas and applied for jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 30 years later, I'm fixing to retire.
Wow, that's a life well lived. You've seen a lot, you've done a lot, and
sometimes.
Understand that. So in the film, you tell the story of how you were involved in a police-involved shooting and how that impacted your life. Kind of unpack that a little bit for us.
Well, after my shooting, the stress really began. The fear of being indicted, the fear of saying it was a bad shoot, and being charged with capital murder, puts a lot of stress on you.
Sure.
Yeah, I was 19 years in then. This was 11 years ago, and during that time. I was divorced 2 years from my second wife at that point. And that happened on a Sunday, and I was leaving on a Tuesday to my second son's Marine Corps boot camp graduation. So I didn't have a lot of time to adjust or deal with the stress.
Mm-hmm.
So I went straight out to California. And then life went on. I was off for 3 weeks, went back to work. And over time, started drinking more and more, and, depression started, and anxiety started, and it just, they didn't clear me for 11 months. So I was 11 months of anxiety, stress,
Now,
depression.
were you like off duty at the time, those 11 months, or were you?
No, I was back
You
to
were
work.
working? Okay.
I was back to work. Yeah.
So you
I
had
went
this
back to
hanging
work
over your head, right?
for 11 months.
Wow.
And that's the
Wow.
worst part.
Yeah.
It's bad enough, you took someone's life,
Mm-hmm.
but then you got to go through. See, the public don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just not, we just go out and shoot somebody and we have a party. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And
We
most
go through the same
and most
criminal.
cops I know never want to do that, right?
I never wanted to.
Yeah.
Never wanted to. And for 19 years, could I do it? Now I could have killed 12 people before then, but I didn't. And for whatever reason, I didn't, and it all works out. But anyway, long story short, after about several years, one friend of mine kept telling me to go get some help. She thought I'm not the same person I was, and she begged me to get some help, and I refused. But no, you know what the P in PTSD stands for? And the stigma, and then I'm going to lose my job. The first responder community was not supportive of mental health back then.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to when I was kind of hitting rock bottom there.
What were going back to your friend, what were some of the things that she was seeing in you that was causing her to say, hey, you need to get some help?
The depression, the anxiety, the dangerous behaviors that I was doing, up at the casino 3 times a week, running around with all the women I could find, calling in sick to work so I could stay home and drink. So, she was just noticing all the signs. And she was the only one, and I think everyone else did, but she was the only one that was saying things to me, letting me know, hey, you don't have as much fun anymore. You're chasing all these women around, you calling off from work, stuff like that. And, I started dating in 2015. I started dating my present wife that you met at the premiere.
Yep.
And she only knew me like that. She didn't know me the 2 years before. She didn't see the change. But my other friend saw the change. So
what was it that made you say yes to getting help?
Well, I was in a real deep depression. It was a Sunday afternoon in July, because that was the anniversary time. And I'd reached out to an old buddy a couple weeks before, and he didn't call me back. So I picked up the phone. I called him. I said, hey, I need some help. He says, all right, brother, I got you. Because I know he had gotten help when he had an incident years before. And he was retired, so he wasn't attached to the PD. But he was still attached to the PD, because then he called the chief and ratted me out.
Probably the best thing that happened to you, huh?
And it was. And I've told the chief, you lied, but I'm okay with your lie, because you got me the help I needed at the time. I was one mistake from probably losing my career 5 years ago.
Wow.
Because this was 6 years after that I asked for the help.
Yeah.
And the chief at the time was really just beginning the mental health stuff here. So I was like his first test subject. So.
And so what I know in our conversation when I was down in Texas, you talked about how the chief used these words that weren't like, you're going to see a therapist. He used some other kind of words. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, those are that's what I came up with. And that's what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like they call, they say everything's a trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think it's a trauma. I call them incidents. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like that word trauma. I break my leg, that's trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it's your mind that's, messed up, to me, all the incidents are incidents.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first went to see Dr. Powers,
Mm-hmm.
I had to tell him, you got to dumb this down to me and explain to me what is going on here.
Mm-hmm.
So he was able to dumb it down. And in the course of the sessions, I'm not going to call it treatment. If mental illness is not a disease, then it's not an illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are all the things I would come up with. They're incidents. These are sessions and stuff like that, because the stigma and that kind of stuff is still in my head,
Sure. Yeah.
But if I think of it that way and I keep the mental illness stuff away from it, then it's easier to seek help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember you said something about the chief said something about, I got a program for you.
He said when the chief confronted me, and I told him, yeah, I need help. He said, okay, I want you to go see my guy. Okay. And he took me off patrol duty, hid me away so that I could go through these sessions. And he only kept it between two other people. Nobody knew what I was doing, you know? And he asked me, hey, all I ask of you is would you speak to city council so that I could get more funding? I said, Chief, if this works, I'll speak to whoever you want to. Because that's just he knows that's my personality.
Sure.
I don't care to say what I feel. I'm an open book, So after I finished, about a year later, actually, I went back to patrol. And then through the grapevine, he told me to put in for an inside job. So I could have a normal work schedule. So that's how I ended up becoming a detective. And then after I come upstairs, that's when he asked me to present to our entire command staff, which was about 70 people in the room that day.
Wow.
And that was my first public speaking.
And
And
what did that do for you? I mean, how did you feel about that? And what did that do for you?
Well, I learned that talking about it is therapy for me. It heals me more. So when I'm looking out in the conference room, and I worked with everybody in that room, and they've known me at this time for 25 years, 26 years at the time. And, they wouldn't have thought that I would be that guy that had PTSD and anxiety and depression. And when I got done speaking, because when I spoke to them, I wanted to get across the stuff that happened after those 11 months on how I felt I was treated. Right? Because I don't think I was being treated good from upper people in the department. And after I got done with that, a lot of them came up to me and said, thank you. And what a great presentation that was. And I'm like, okay, I'm out of the closet. Everybody knows my business now. And that was a little weight off my shoulder.
Sure.
Sure. And now you see, I do a movie, I do the screenings, I teach the academy now, and I do a presentation to them, the new recruits.
What's that like when you're talking to these new guys?
The first time I did it, it wasn't planned. We were out bomb training, like where we did the initial interview.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was in the middle of we needed some fillers, whatever. And I had just kind of finished my sessions, you know,
Mm.
and one of the guys was talking about it. And I looked at them and they were sitting in a U. There was probably 20 of them sitting in a U.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "You guys want to hear my story?" And they're like, "Sure." And I did a presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And I never taught a recruit class that was ever so focused, quiet, attentive. They didn't even move.
Wow.
They just listened so intently. And I did it about 30-minute deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I told them I got PTSD and I just finished up, getting help. Don't be afraid to get help.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as they left for lunch, each one of them shook my hand and said, "Thank you."
Mm-hmm.
And the last one waited till everybody else left. The other recruits left. He goes, "I really want to say thank you." He goes, I know it's not just me. Was in the, overseas. I was a drone pilot,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got 100 and however many kill missions, whatever. And I went. I had to go get help too.
Wow.
He goes, "It's nice to see, they're not going to hold it against me here."
Mm-hmm.
So that was, if I could help one person, then I don't mind doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done it every academy after that now.
Wow. So I know when we were filming, it took some talking from Todd to get you to say yes to sit in front of my camera and and
Yeah.
talk. And I remember when we were done, you were like, "Man, I didn't cuss one time." That was that was a really funny moment for me. But what did that do for you? Then we had the premiere there in Irving,
Yeah.
right close to Garland where you work. What did that do for you to come to that theater, see, you have a few minutes on the screen? I mean, and what did that do for you?
I don't know. Going to the premiere was really cool. So
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that. So did the wife.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing the first half of the movie was very intense for me.
Mm-hmm.
But then the second half helped relieve that anxiety, our part with the other people that were in the movie.
Sure.
And then just seeing me in a movie was like kind of cool. But it also gave me the confidence to do this,
Mm-hmm.
more confidence to do public stuff and be open about it and talk about it. I'm not ashamed,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ashamed.
I'll never forget what you told me that day when you shook my hand after down at the front of the stage in the theater. You looked at me and you said, "Thank you for putting me in your film." And what you said really struck out. You said, "Every time I tell my story, I heal a little bit more."
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
That is true.
So can you expound on that a little bit?
You look back in life, and what I've learned is I got a lot more incidents in the course of my life than just this one.
Hmm.
This was the one that tipped the scale, emptied the glass, filled the glass, and getting this feeling better about this, it opens me up to healing the other stuff too now.
Hmm.
So I'm presently in therapy now, in counseling, to deal with that. Because all of a sudden, all that came flooding back, flooding in my head,
Sure.
And in learning about the mental health and stuff now, I found that by going to therapy, I may not be talking to an audience, I'm talking to her. And I tell her every time, when I leave her office, I have this feeling of calmness and peace, even if it's only for a day. So that healing continues, and you'll never be fully healed, but your quality of life goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm no longer, involved with those dangerous behaviors and going nuts in the casinos. And so my quality of life is going back to where it was before that incident,
Mm-hmm.
if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you told me that the week before you went to get help, you drank a whole case of whiskey.
Yep. 6 bottles.
Wow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And that was just trying to trying to stop the noise, right?
So the noise. Because especially in July, which was always the worst.
Was that when the incident happened in July?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to have it running in your head all the time. If my mind was idle, it went straight to that.
Hmm.
Why can't I remember this? How come I can remember this, but not this?
Mm-hmm.
How come I didn't know this? And it would just, that record player in your head is going over and over and over. And you get the nightmares. And then, I wasn't sleeping but 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day. So that was my way of self-medicating, which wasn't good for me.
Sure.
But yeah, and that's said, I was sitting there on the back porch drinking that day in the afternoon. And I was never suicidal, because a lot of time people ask me that.
Mm-hmm.
No. Severely depressed, anxious, stuff, yeah, but never suicidal. I have 2 ex-wives that live. I tell my kids, if they say I killed myself, it's a murder. But it was right then. It was like I had enough. I went 6 years. I had enough of this running my life, basically, keeping me, constantly anxious and on guard, and so that's when I decided I got to do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to do
Well,
something.
I'm certainly thankful that you got help that you needed and that you had leadership at the agency that allowed you to do that and that brought you back to your position there. So what's the future hold for you?
Retirement.
And so we're
Retirement.
recording this in November, right before Thanksgiving. So how many months do we have left?
February 3rd might be my last day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's on the docket for then?
A week later, I'll be in Cabos.
Nice.
taking the wife on a vacation.
Yeah.
Because she deserves one too.
And that's how many years in service in law enforcement?
30.
30. Wow.
30.
Yeah.
30 years. Matter of fact, next week was our 30th anniversary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what will you do continuing on to take care of you to be healthy?
Well, I'm going to keep busy, for one. I'm going to continue my therapy. And I'm going to get healthy. Mentally and physically. Yeah. Sure. That's the plan anyway.
That's the plan. Well, congratulations on a long career and surviving it to this point. And I just want to say, for me personally, thank you for being willing to let your guard down and sit in front of my camera and talk about your story. I know that wasn't easy to do.
It wasn't, but it afterwards, and seeing the movie and seeing the people's reactions, and how many people does this movie help since you put it out? I'm told all the time, more than I would think.
Yeah. Yep.
Just here at this department, I'm told there's more people around here you helped than you really know. So that alone was worth doing it, and thank you for putting me in it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the exact numbers of people who have seen it, but it's in the tens of thousands who have seen this movie, and continue, because we got events planned all next year. We have might even be going to Australia. We're talking to some folks about that and bringing it down there.
Well,
And
I'll go with you.
get in line, buddy. I think Todd's right in front of you. You might
Yeah,
have to
Todd's
push him
gonna have to
aside.
hold back a little bit. Um,
But yeah, it's been, thousands of people, and we've had about 120 agencies from around the country who have purchased the film to use for training, and so they're using
wow.
it on a continuing basis, for
How many
training.
times has it been aired on Prime?
I don't know the recent numbers, but I know earlier this year it was probably close to 3 or 4,000.
Okay.
Uh, so it's getting there. I mean, it's not a blockbuster, but it's reaching the people that it needs to reach,
Well,
and
that's it. I mean,
that's what we want.
3,000 air. That's a minimum of 3,000 people. You
Yeah.
probably there's 4 or 5 in the room.
Yep.
That's the 20,000 people.
Yeah. So we're just excited to, we continue to push it out there, and talking to people. I'll be at the Fire and Police Games in Birmingham this coming summer, showing the film there.
Okay.
Down in Birmingham, Alabama. We'll be, my goodness, where else am I going? Going to Wisconsin again. It's been like the 4th or 5th time in Wisconsin. Going to the Eastern Shore of Maryland in a couple of weeks for a big event with a sheriff's department there. We have the Ohio Department of Justice and the Wisconsin Department of Justice bought the film for use for training for their agencies.
Wow.
We got some big police departments, and small fire departments from all over the country have purchased the film. So it's really, really cool to see that, and we continue to roll it out. We continue to offer it to people around the country. So it's making an impact. And my firefighter buddy in Australia watched it a few weeks ago, and he was deeply moved by it. And there are times when we do these screening events, and I remember one time specifically, I had a guy come up to me and he mentioned you. He was like, that one guy, that bomb squad guy, the detective, he spoke to me. So, it's just,
that to me, it was all worth it.
Yeah.
And the people that are still holding that a tough guy stigma thing, well,
talk to them. Talk to that guy who's the tough dude.
So no, that makes me feel good. I thank you.
Yeah. Yep. So talk to that cop who's or even firefighter or dispatcher who's putting on the facade, putting on the tough person facade. What should they do?
Go seek help. Go seek help. Don't drop the image. I mean, everybody's going to be different. Everybody's cup ain't always full. But when you get to the point where you're thinking about needing help, go do it. Don't keep suffering like I did for 6 years because I was too manly to say there's something wrong with me. I think I told you this in the interview. The hardest thing for me to do was to tell my children, hey, your dad has some issues and he needs to go get this help. They said, okay, Dad. And guess what? They're all in counseling now. Because.
And how's that make you feel?
Daddy did it. We can do it. No, it makes me feel great. Because, I know a lot of their incidents over their childhood and stuff. And now they're even adults. I mean, 2 of them went in the Marines and then they joined the RFD. They have since resigned from the FD. But, they all have no problem going and getting some therapy, having someone else to talk to. And it's doing them good.
Yeah.
I can see how their lives are better now. So, it doesn't hurt to try. Now, a lot of guys will go one time, and I talk to them a lot because they'll at least open up a little bit, and they'll say they didn't like the therapist, or they didn't like the treatment, whether it's EMDR or whatever. Well, and I explained to them, there's not a treatment that fixes everybody.
Right.
There's not a therapist that you're not going to like every therapist. you keep going, you keep on, and you keep getting healthier, find that therapist that you connect with.
Yeah.
And then one of these treatments eventually might get through to you.
Yeah.
And you'll start feeling better. You know? And I get a lot of guys like that. Well, I didn't like my therapist. I said, you know what? I just spent this last 2 years myself looking for the right one. And when I met this one, it was an instant connection. I felt very comfortable with really opening up to her as a stranger, you know, because now I'm going into deeper things from past, you know, and she don't take my BS. She doesn't do it. She straightforward and honest with me. First thing she said was, I might say things to you that you don't like. I said, that's why I picked you. I don't want you to be afraid to tell me because you're afraid to be mad or I'm not going to come back. I need the honesty. You know, I don't want to fake. I want an honest person who's tough. She is. So they got to just keep going different ones so you find the right one. You know, because that's the hardest thing to do. I had done a screening last year or year and a half ago, and I was on the panel, and it was all of the clinicians, therapists, psychologists, social workers. It was their convention. And they had asked me during it, how can we get the first responders to talk to us? I said, you got to gain just a little bit of their trust. I said, because we don't trust anybody. And I said, I don't trust my wife. She's sitting right there. I don't trust the chief of police. He's sitting right next to me. I don't trust anybody. We're cops. But if you can just gain a little bit of their trust by being honest with them, they'll open up like an open book to you. Because once they get comfortable with you and you gain just a little bit of trust, and it gives them a little confidence to be free to speak their feelings and how they're feeling. So that's important, I think. And a lot of times when they don't like the therapist or clinician, it's because they weren't doing that personal trust thing first. They go straight into doing whatever, you know? So.
Yeah. That's great advice. That's great advice for, and it also takes some guts for people in your position to be honest, right?
Oh yeah. Especially when you're talking about this.
Yeah.
You know?
When you're bearing your soul in the deepest, darkest moments of your life, it takes
exactly.
It takes some kahunas. Yeah.
But,
well, Mike, it's really been an honor to get to know you and to understand your story and to hear your story and to see you blossom in that and to continue to get help. That's been just a real blessing for me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me in there. I mean, that gave me confidence. Definitely confidence.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, your story continues to make a difference. And so that's the blessing about doing a project like this that kind of lives on and continues to reach people.
And that's healing for me. And that's very satisfying for me to know tens of thousands of people. When it hit Prime, my brothers and sisters started buying it because they hadn't seen it. You know, and I got no negative feedback from them. So,
yeah,
very satisfying.
That's awesome. The film is available for purchase for agencies to use for training. And a part of that is this, what we call the digital toolkit, the educational toolkit. And we put some kind of outtakes or extended interviews that we didn't put in the film.
Yeah.
So it's a good chance we're going to put more of your interview in that tool for agencies. And so once that comes out, I'll let you know and let you know where you can see it. And
I still think I should have shaved.
No, it just kind of adds to the persona, you know, it adds to the person. It makes it more gritty and real. So,
Yeah, okay.
so very good. Well, Mike, thank you for taking time today to kind of do an update here on the podcast. And it may spark some of those people who have been holding off on purchasing the film to make that step to get a hold of it and to watch it. So, so thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. And good to see you again.
Thank you, Mike, for being on the show today, and we wish you a very happy and healthy retirement. Don't get sunburned down there in Mexico. I wish you the very best. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and to share this podcast with your tribe. If Mike's story resonated with you, please share it widely. And then if you wouldn't mind, leave a review. I really depend on those reviews to help me understand what you like, what you don't like, and to perhaps bring new content to the show. As you leave reviews, that guides me. So I want to also remind you that you are not alone. And if you need someone to talk to and don't know where you can turn, you can dial 988 for help. Until next time, be well, take care of yourself and those around you, and go out and do something great in the world.